Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to paint this galaxy-inspired mountain lake scenery with acrylic paint because I'm the type of person who just can't decide on one art medium, so I like to switch things up, and today I was feeling like painting with acrylic paint. I will walk you through everything step by step, including all the things I will be using in this video. Now for the background, I will be using the mixed media paper by Hahnemühle because it's quite thick and also has a nice surface, but you can use any paper that is thick. You can also use a canvas if you have one. I just wanted to use paper. I also got sent a set of acrylic paint by the brand called Mozart, and I wanted to test it out in this video. And as for the brushes, I will be using randomly collected flat synthetic brushes because I wanted to create that very smooth and very nice transition between all the colors. Now I also got a lot of questions about what tape am I using. I usually use washi tape, but I also recently started using the pink Tesa tape that is made for very delicate surfaces like wallpapers and stuff like that, and it works great as well. It doesn't tear the paper and you don't have to use your hairdryer or any other hacks to make it less sticky. In this video, I'll be using washi tape because I just couldn't find the tape while I was recording the video. Another art supply I've been using a lot lately when it came to painting with acrylics is the Stay Wet palette. It's great, for example, when you paint with acrylic paint and you need a lot more time and also you want to take a break, but you also don't want your paint to just dry out. And this palette keeps it wet for a longer time. I've mentioned this palette in one of my tips and tricks videos that I will link in the description box down below, where I show you exactly how to use it. And of course, you also need clean water to clean our brushes, but also to dilute the paint a little bit. Okay, I think I've mentioned everything, so we can just go ahead and start painting. Alright, so as always, I like to tape down the paper to my desk, not only so the paper doesn't buckle, but also because I really like the frame it creates once the painting is finished. Start off with a warm yellow color. In this case, the hue was called Deep Yellow. Load up your brush with water and the yellow paint and apply it to the lower third of the paper. You just want to create this narrow line of paint while moving your brush from left to right, back and forth. If you notice you have a hard time distributing the paint because the brush won't add the paint to the paper and everything is super streaky, simply use a little bit more water so the texture of the paint becomes more liquid. Then you will need a red color. Here I use Crimson Red that is more of a cooler red. With this color, you want to start blending it into the yellow paint from the upper and from the lower side towards the center to create a transition between red, orange to yellow from both sides. Here I added way too much red paint, so I used the yellow color again and simply mix it into the red color on top the same way as in the beginning. But I still kept the center more yellowish than the rest. Don't worry about making it look perfect. You will see that I keep changing and tweaking the colors as I go, and that's totally okay. You can always paint over it until you're happy with it. Now, since these colors looked a little bit too vibrant for me, I wanted to mute them to make them look a little bit more pastel-like. So what I did, I took some white acrylic paint and blended it in on top of everything. So I basically moved the brush with white paint, which is titanium white, and went from the left to right, back and forth to apply the paint and to blend it into the paint below more evenly. As you can see, I added more white to the center than to the rest since we still want the center to be brighter than the rest. Now we have an underpainting, and now we can go ahead and create everything that is around it. Next, I used a violet colored paint and added it to the lower part of the painting until I reached the orange colored paint. Now as you can see, the transition is very harsh, so now we want to work on creating a nice transition between all the different colors. So what I did, I mixed my yellow color, titanium white, and a tiny amount of crimson red and applied it on top of the first layer the same way as we did earlier. But this time you want to blend the lower part slightly into the violet color below that is still wet. And then clean your brush, load it up with the violet color again, and apply it on top of the first layer, but this time you also want to blend it into the orangey color. The tricky part here is that you want to make both colors reach at the center and make them blend together, and then make the transition more even by blending the orangey color downwards and the violet color upwards. Next, you want to bring back the red on top of the orange color and blend both colors together the same way. So apply the paint above it and slowly bring it towards the center by blending it lightly into the orange color. Now for the rest of the sky, you will be using a lot of blues and purples. So here I mixed in a little bit of the violet color right at the edge of the crimson red and blended it in to then be able to create a transition between the red and the violet color. Here, as you can see, I only focus on the right side of the painting, as later I want to add another color right next to it. So here I wanted to add the cerulean blue and blend it into the violet colored paint on the right and above it, which then transitions into the black colored paint. Now the tricky part again is to make everything blend into each other super evenly, but don't worry about it too much, as we will still add clouds on top which will cover any uneven parts. This is only the underpainting. The only area we want to be as even as possible is the yellow-orange colors, and all the rest below it, as here we will have the lake reflecting the sky. I also added a few sunset reflections in the sky with a little bit of violet and yellow paint, but this is totally not necessary, as we will add a lot of other texture on top later. And now comes the fun part. We are going to create the fluffy clouds. Here you only need a little bit of paint. What we want to do now is you want to add just a tiny amount of really pale violet paint to one area, and then we want to blend it out. Here I would recommend to use an older brush, as this could damage your bristles from all the scrubbing against the texture of the paper. So to create the fluffy texture, add just a tiny amount of paint and then blend it out in a circular motion, shaping the round fluffy shapes of the clouds. Make sure you only use a little bit of paint, or otherwise you will just completely cover the whole background. We still want the different colors in the sky to look through. To make it more three-dimensional, I made some clouds a little bit lighter. For example, I used almost only white for the clouds on the left side, and the more and more I moved my way to the right side where the sky was darker, I used more violet colored paint to create the clouds. Now we have the base, we have lighter and darker areas and some background looking through. Now we just want to intensify some light reflections by adding a little bit more white paint to just a few areas and blend them out while keeping the initial area where we added the paint as covering as possible so the white really pops. So this is how it looks so far. And how can we leave the galaxy-inspired sky without stars? So for this step, I covered up my desk with additional paper, and then I used white paint that I mixed together with a little bit of water to make it more fluid, and then I sprinkled some stars onto the sky and a little bit onto the lake area by flicking the brush against another brush using its end. Now for the painting to make sense, we only need to place something on top to create some sort of a horizon, and in this case we're going to paint the mountains now. For this step, load up your brush with black paint and create one straight line in the center of the orangey part that we created earlier. Now from here you want to outline the mountains. So here I sketched out the lines using black paint and tried to add higher mountains on the left and right side and made them smaller and smaller towards the center. Once you're happy with the outline, cover everything using black paint again. Now these mountains look really flat right now, so what you want to do now is you want to add highlights and shadows to make it look more three-dimensional. And because the sky is mostly purple, I decided to use a very pale purple color to create the shadows. So what you want to do now is to add the paint by simply dabbing it onto the black silhouette of the mountains. Here you can see I just dabbed the brush over the paper while leaving out some black areas. Since the center is the lightest source, everything that is facing towards the center needs to be lighter than anything else that is facing the outside. So here, for example, I added a very light pale color to the left side of each mountain when I was working on the right side of the painting, and when I went to the left side of the painting, I added light reflections on the right side of the mountains. So imagine that each mountain has a line in the center. On one side of the line, the mountain will be brighter, and on the other side, it will be darker. And for the darker side of the mountain, I used a more darker grayish color and applied the paint the same way. You don't have to precisely add every little dot of paint, just let go and dab the paint randomly while only focusing on leaving out some black space in between, making sure that there is a difference between the lighter and the darker areas and that the silhouette of the mountain looks through a little bit. And even if it doesn't work out the first time, you can always go back with the black paint and adjust everything, or you can just paint over the whole entire mountain and start again. Now, since we want to create a lake scenery, we need to create the same mountain below, but mirrored. So I just followed the same steps. Between the mountain and the reflection, you want to leave out a little bit of space. Here the gap was a little bit too wide, which I will fix later, so I would recommend to pay attention to that already. But in the end, it actually helped me because I had some trouble mirroring the image of the mountain, so the lines were not evenly mirrored, and the reflection was taller than the actual mountain. So I tweaked and tweaked everything, and the gap helped me to actually prolong the mountain and made them both look a lot more even. You can use a ruler or move the paper so the mountains are vertical, and it will be a lot easier to see where you should draw the lines. Another thing I did before removing the tape, I added a lighter layer of yellow paint on top of the highlights, so we also incorporate the yellow light of the sky. Now let's remove the tape and add some final touch-ups. As I said earlier, I prolonged the upper mountain and added a lighter layer of violet paint to the yellow area so it doesn't stand out so much anymore. Adjust anything you might have discovered, add some additional stars to the sky and the lake if you want, and the painting is finished. If you need more acrylic painting ideas, you can check out the videos right here. I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. I upload new videos every single week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!